The wall of water came without warning. I stand frozen in the doorway of my flagship restaurant as muddy floodwater surges through Beirut's Hamra district, swallowing everything in its path. The winter storm that meteorologists had dismissed as typical seasonal rainfall is now devouring 20 years of my life's work. Mr. John, we must go now. My head chef Mahmoud screams above the roar, pulling my arm as ceiling tiles crash down behind us. My feet won't move. I watch in paralyzed horror as water rushes through cedars of Lebanon, the crown jewel of my restaurant empire, where Beirut's business elite dined on my grandmother's recipes in the heart of our rebuilt city. The water reaches my knees, thick with debris from the hillsides above. I lunge toward the office where the backup drives and insurance documents are kept. If I can just save those, the support beam splinters with a sickening crack. The rush of water slams me sideways into the custom marble bar. Pain explodes through my ribs as hand-carved cedar panels, crafted by artisans from the mountains, splinter like matchsticks. John, move! Mahmoud's hands drag me backward as half the ceiling collapses. Outside, rain lashes my face like divine punishment as I watch from across the street. The elegant sign, Cedars of Lebanon in gold Arabic calligraphy, flickers once, twice, then dies as the electrical system shorts out in a shower of sparks. My phone vibrates. The bank. The loan I'd taken for expansion just 4 months ago, $600,000 that now had no collateral, no hope of repayment. I can fix this. I whisper to no one. I always fix everything. But watching my empire drown in Beirut's overwhelmed storm drains, I know this time is different. At 45, I had everything. 5 restaurants across the city's most prestigious neighborhoods, a home in the hills above Junier, respect from the business community that remembered when this city was in ruins. Mr. John, the reporter from Executive Magazine, is here, my assistant announced. The interview went perfectly. I spoke confidently about expansion plans, about bringing authentic Lebanese cuisine back to international prominence, about rebuilding not just my business, but our country's culinary reputation. What drives you, Mr. Haddad? The reporter asked. This city taught me that anything can be rebuilt, I replied. Beirut rose from ashes. So can any dream if you're willing to work for it. That evening, I attended the Lebanese Restaurant Association dinner where I was being honored as Restaurateur of the Year. Omar Khalil, my business partner and oldest friend, raised his glass in toast. To John Haddad, Omar said, a man who proves that Lebanese resilience can overcome any challenge. After the dinner, Omar pulled me aside. John, I need to discuss the new culinary complex project. There have been complications with the municipal permits. What kind of complications? I asked, only half listening, as I spotted the tourism minister across the room. Nothing we can't handle, Omar assured me. Just some additional approvals needed for the drainage and foundation work. I nodded absently. Omar handled technical construction while I focused on culinary vision and marketing. It was a partnership that had rebuilt this district from war damage into Beirut's premier dining destination. Just handle it, whatever it costs. I didn't know Omar's complications were the first signs of systematic corner cutting that would make our entire district vulnerable to the kind of flooding that had plagued Beirut for decades. Construction began the next month on our ambitious culinary complex. 3 restaurants, a cooking school, and Lebanon's first upscale food court. The location was perfect, in the heart of Hamra's Renaissance, surrounded by banks and hotels that symbolized our country's determination to reclaim its place as the Paris of the Middle East. 2 weeks later, the call came. Mr. John, you need to come immediately. There's been an incident. I arrived to find our partially constructed building flooded, not from the sea, but from Beirut's notoriously inadequate storm drainage system, overwhelmed by a winter storm that had sent water cascading down from the mountains. How did this happen? I demanded, watching thousands of dollars in materials floating in murky water. Sir, the drainage specifications appear insufficient for this soil type and elevation, the foreman explained nervously. Omar stepped forward quickly. Minor setback, John. Insurance will cover the damages. We'll be back on schedule within a month. But looking at the devastation, something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't just bad luck. This was the kind of infrastructure failure that had plagued Lebanon for decades, made worse by corruption and shortcuts. Fix it, I told Omar through gritted teeth. Whatever it takes. I didn't know Omar was already planning his escape, that he'd been siphoning money from our accounts for months, preparing for the inevitable collapse he'd helped engineer through his corrupt dealings with municipal inspectors. 3 weeks after the flood destroyed my flagship restaurant, I stood in the ruins with an insurance adjuster who delivered devastating news. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Haddad, the man said, reviewing his tablet. Your policy excludes damage from infrastructure, failure, flooding. Since this was caused by municipal drainage system inadequacy rather than direct storm damage, it falls outside coverage. That's impossible. This is comprehensive business insurance. The terms are quite specific. He showed me legal language that distinguished between different types of water damage. Direct rain or sea flooding, yes. Municipal infrastructure failure, I'm afraid not. I stared at the twisted remains where Beirut's rebuilding elite had once celebrated our city's renaissance over my grandmother's kibbeh. Now it looked like the war zones our parents had fled. This restaurant employs 43 people, I said desperately. It's part of rebuilding this neighborhood. Mr. Haddad, I understand the cultural significance, but the contract terms are what they are. After he left, I walked through the wreckage alone. The flood had destroyed not just equipment, but irreplaceable pieces of our heritage. Antique brass coffee pots from the souk, vintage photographs of my grandfather's original restaurant in the old city, a prayer rug my grandmother had carried through the Civil War. That evening, my wife, Leila, found me sitting in my car outside our hillside home, unable to face going inside. The children are asking questions, she said gently, opening the passenger door. How bad is it? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Worse than bad. No insurance coverage. American loan payments due next week. Without the flagship restaurant, I couldn't finish. We'll survive this, John. Our families survived the war. We'll survive this too. The war? I laughed bitterly. At least during the war, people knew who the enemy was. Now I discover my own partner has been setting me up for ruin. The next morning, I met with my banker, a Palestinian Lebanese man who'd helped finance Beirut's reconstruction. He looked across his desk with the expression of someone who'd seen too many dreams die in this resilient but fragile city. John, my friend, I wish I had better news. The numbers were catastrophic. 600,000 in dollar-denominated loans, always risky in Lebanon's volatile economy with no collateral. My other restaurants were profitable in Lebanese pounds, but the currency devaluation meant they couldn't cover foreign debt. Without the flagship location, the entire chain would collapse within 3 months. John, I'm sorry, but it appears Omar has been systematically withdrawing funds from your business accounts over the past 6 months. Nearly $200,000 is missing. The betrayal hit worse than the flood itself. My trusted partner hadn't just been careless with construction, he'd been stealing from me while setting up the conditions for disaster. What are my options? Liquidation, sell everything quickly, pay what debts you can in dollars, and hope the lira doesn't collapse further before you finish. I spent the next week making desperate calls throughout Beirut's tight business community. The answer was always the same. Too risky in this economic climate, too damaged to rebuild quickly, too uncertain with Lebanon's ongoing financial crisis. My brother-in-law Khalil, who'd survived the war by learning when to cut losses, agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Ashrafiyeh. John, you know I love you, he said in Arabic, stirring sugar into his coffee. But in Lebanon, we've learned that sometimes you must lose a battle to survive the war. This isn't a battle, it's one flood, one setback. He studied me with the expression of someone who'd seen Beirut destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. Brother, maybe God is telling you that building your identity on restaurants was never the foundation you needed. What's that supposed to mean? Maybe you were meant to build something that serves the Lord instead of just serving the wealthy in Hamra. I left that meeting carrying the familiar Lebanese burden of disappointment mixed with stubborn determination. Everyone had advice about divine plans. No one had solutions for dollar-denominated debt. That Friday, I attended noonday prayer for the first time in months, not from faith, but from the desperation that had driven my ancestors to survive countless invasions and occupations. After the service, an elderly man named Abu Ahmad approached me. I recognized him as a successful businessman who'd retired to focus on interfaith charity work, one of those Lebanese Christians who'd found peace with his Muslim neighbors. Brother John, I've heard about your difficulties. News travels fast in Beirut, I replied bitterly. I wanted to share something with you. 20 years ago, during the worst of the economic collapse, I lost everything. I was convinced that Christ had abandoned Lebanon entirely. And then what? You found religion and the economy magically improved? He smiled at my sarcasm. Then I met Jesus, not the Jesus of sectarian politics, but Isa al-Masih, the Prince of Peace, who understands what it means to see your people's hopes destroyed. I stared at him. You're mixing religions, Abu Ahmad. I'm following the one who said, he came for those who are broken, not those who think they're strong. In Lebanon, we know about being broken. He pulled out a worn booklet from his pocket. Take this, brother. If it helps, praise God. If not, you've lost nothing but time. The cover read, The Gospel According to John in Arabic and English. When you're tired of fighting this battle alone, he said, remember that Jesus specialized in impossible resurrections. 5 weeks after the flood, Omar finally agreed to meet me, but only after I threatened legal action. He chose a crowded cafe in Achrafeh, probably thinking I wouldn't make a scene. You look terrible, John, he said, no longer bothering with false friendship. You stole from me, I said directly. The accounts, the construction shortcuts, the drainage failures. You set me up. His mask finally dropped. Business is survival, John. I saw the economic collapse coming and prepared accordingly. He leaned forward conspiratorially. What if I told you this disaster could become the greatest opportunity of your career? I'm listening. The insurance companies are overwhelmed by flood claims throughout the city. The government's emergency fund is depleted. Everyone's desperate to settle quickly and move on. My claim was denied. Your first claim was denied, he corrected. But what if there was additional damage you hadn't noticed? What if a secondary engineering inspection revealed problems that weren't apparent during the immediate aftermath? I stared at him. Are you talking about insurance fraud? I'm talking about getting what you deserve. These companies have taken premiums from Lebanese businesses for years, while finding excuses to deny claims. We're simply ensuring they fulfill their actual obligations. Omar pulled out his tablet, showing photographs of flood damage throughout Hamra and Achrafeh. The construction company handled renovations on most of these buildings over the past 3 years. I have detailed knowledge of their structural vulnerabilities. I frowned. What does that have to do with my restaurant? Your building sits on the same geological foundation, same soil composition, same elevation, same relationship to the mountain drainage patterns. His finger traced lines on the screen. If I conducted a supplementary engineering assessment, I might discover that the flooding caused subsurface damage that won't manifest for months. The implications hit me like the flood itself. Omar, are you telling me that you cut corners on drainage throughout the district? That multiple buildings are sitting on compromised foundations? His confident expression flickered. John, in Lebanese construction, you balance costs against risks. Sometimes the calculations prove optimistic. How many buildings, how many businesses are vulnerable because you wanted to save money on proper drainage? Keep your voice down. Your signature is on half the permit applications for this district's reconstruction. The threat was clear. If Omar went down for construction fraud, he'd ensure I was buried in the same grave. We file amended insurance claims for multiple properties affected by the flooding. He continued smoothly. I provide engineering assessments documenting extensive structural damage requiring complete reconstruction. Insurance companies pay out millions in settlements. We rebuild everything properly this time and we split the substantial profit margins. How much money are we talking about? Omar smiled. Enough to rebuild your entire restaurant chain. Enough to expand into Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Enough to secure your family's future even if Lebanon's economy completely collapses. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking garage beneath our apartment building, unable to face going upstairs. Omar's proposal would solve everything, restore my restaurants, pay off dollar-denominated debts, and provide security against Lebanon's perpetual instability. All it required was defrauding insurance companies and falsifying engineering reports about damage that didn't exist. My phone buzzed with a text from Abu Ahmad. Brother John, I've been praying for you. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over delete. But something, maybe the same stubborn Lebanese survival instinct that had rebuilt Beirut from ashes, stopped me. The next day, I sat at Abu Ahmad's small interfaith community center, not for religious instruction, but because I needed someone who understood both Lebanese pragmatism and moral complexity. I'm not here for a sermon, I said, as I sat across from him in his modest office. I just needed somewhere quiet to think. Sometimes the best thinking happens in silence, he replied, gesturing to a chair. After several minutes of unexpected peace, he spoke gently. May I ask what troubles you? I have been offered a solution to my financial problems, but it would require doing things that aren't exactly legal. Ah, and you're wondering if desperate circumstances justify compromising your values? Something like that? In Lebanon, we've always been pragmatic about survival. Tell me, brother, when this crisis is over, what kind of man do you want to be? The question hit unexpectedly hard. I want to be successful. I want to provide for my family. I want to rebuild what I lost. And if you could only have one, success or integrity, which would you choose? That's not fair. In Lebanese business, you need both to survive. Perhaps. But Jesus faced this exact choice in the wilderness. The devil offered him all the kingdoms of the world if he would compromise his principles. I'm not Jesus. I'm a Lebanese businessman trying to save his family from economic collapse. Yes, you are. But you're also made in God's image, with a soul that matters more than any earthly kingdom, even one rebuilt from war. Abu Ahmad pulled out his worn gospel booklet. Let me tell you about the day I met Jesus personally. It was the day after I lost everything in the 2006 war. My business was destroyed, my reputation ruined. I was sitting alone in the rubble, planning to end my life rather than face the shame. Despite my resistance, I found myself listening. His story was too close to my own experience to ignore. I had pills from the pharmacy, enough to end the pain permanently. But as I sat there, I heard something that changed everything. What? Church bells from St. George Cathedral, ringing through the destruction. They were calling people to prayer in a city that looked like the end of the world. And I realized that some things survive even when everything else is destroyed. He opened the booklet to a marked page. I went to that service and heard about a Jesus who understood what it meant to lose everything, to be abandoned by friends, to face death for doing what was right. And that changed everything. It changed what mattered. I discovered that Jesus didn't promise to remove all storms, but he promised to walk through them with us. And in Lebanon, we need someone who understands storms. That evening, I sat with Omar's proposal on one side of my desk and Abu Ahmad's gospel booklet on the other. Two paths forward, two different definitions of survival in a country that had taught its people to do whatever was necessary to endure. At 11 p.m., Omar called. "It's time, John. My contacts need an answer tonight." I was about to say yes when my eyes fell on a verse Abu Ahmad had underlined. "For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" "I can't do it," I said suddenly. "What?" "I can't do it, Omar. Find someone else. But I won't be part of insurance fraud." The silence was deafening. When Omar finally spoke, his voice carried the cold calculation that had helped him survive Lebanon's wars and economic collapses. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, John, and you're making an enemy you can't afford to have in this country." The line went dead. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: the ability to look at myself in a mirror without shame. 3 days after rejecting Omar's scheme, the consequences of my moral stand became brutally clear. In Lebanon's interconnected business community, Omar's influence reached everywhere. My banker called with chilling news. "John, we've discovered some irregularities in your loan documentation. The central bank requires immediate review." I arrived to find him reviewing files with government financial investigators. "John, some of the collateral valuations for your loans appear to have been significantly inflated." They showed me equipment assessments I'd signed based on Omar's professional appraisals, numbers that had been manipulated by nearly 40%. "This constitutes loan fraud under Lebanese banking law," the investigator said, "whether intentional or not." My remaining assets were frozen pending investigation. Not only was I bankrupt, I was now potentially facing criminal charges in a legal system where connections mattered more than justice. That evening, my wife met me at the door with tears and a letter from our children's private school demanding immediate payment of $12,000 in overdue tuition. "We can't pay this," Leila whispered. "Where will they go to school?" The public schools were overcrowded and underfunded, taught in Arabic by teachers whose salaries hadn't been paid in months due to the government's financial crisis. My remaining restaurant managers called an emergency meeting. Word had spread through Beirut's business community about my loan problems. "Mr. John," my head chef said diplomatically, "our suppliers are demanding payment in dollars in advance. The lira is collapsing and they won't accept promises anymore. Without supplier credit, my restaurants would close within days." I received a call with an electronically disguised voice. "Mr. Haddad, you made an unwise choice. Omar offered partnership. Now you'll discover what opposition means in Lebanon." Omar wasn't just abandoning our business relationship. He was systematically destroying what remained, using the networks of corruption and influence that had helped rebuild Beirut after the war. Monday brought devastating news. The engineering firm that had certified buildings throughout our district released a statement declaring their previous assessments compromised by incomplete structural data, recommending immediate reinspection of all associated properties. My children began asking questions I couldn't answer. My 16-year-old daughter, Yasmin, confronted me with teenage fury. "Dad, what did you do? Mira's father says you're a criminal who stole money from banks." No, Habibti, your father made poor business decisions, but I'm not a criminal. Then why is everyone treating us like we have some disease? Why can't we go back to school? I had no answer that would make sense to a teenager who'd grown up believing Beirut's renaissance was permanent. That night, I read Abu Ahmad's gospel booklet again, searching for wisdom that made sense in a country where survival often required moral flexibility. My phone buzzed with another anonymous message. It's not too late to reconsider, Mr. Haddad. Omar's offer still stands. Pride is expensive. Can your Lebanese family afford it? 2 months after rejecting Omar's scheme, we lost our hillside home to foreclosure. Standing in the empty rooms where our children had grown up, believing in Lebanon's promise of prosperity, I felt the weight of generational dreams collapsing. My 15-year-old son Karim announced he was quitting school to work in a mechanic's shop. I'll earn dollars instead of wasting time on education that won't matter when the economy collapses completely. You will finish your education, I said firmly. Why? So I can end up like you, educated and broke because I believed success was possible in Lebanon. He stormed out, leaving me to face the truth that my failures were stealing my children's futures. Hassan, my banker, pulled me aside during the final foreclosure paperwork. John, Omar has been approaching other business owners with investment opportunities. Several have received substantial insurance settlements based on his engineering assessments. How much money? Over $10 million dollars in the past 2 months. And he's told several people that you were the original architect of the strategy. My blood turned to ice. Omar was not only profiting from systematic insurance fraud, he was positioning me as the mastermind while he escaped with millions. The next morning, I received a call that would change everything. Mr. Haddad, this is Inspector Sara Khoury with Lebanon's Financial Crimes Investigation Unit. We need to discuss some insurance claims connected to your former business partner. I met Inspector Khoury, a sharp-eyed woman who'd built her career fighting the corruption that had plagued Lebanon for decades. Your name has come up repeatedly as someone with extensive knowledge of fraudulent insurance claims. Multiple sources have identified you as the financial mastermind behind a systematic fraud network. Inspector, I'd like to tell you exactly what Omar Khalil proposed to me and why I refused to participate. For 2 hours, I detailed every conversation, every document, every aspect of Omar's criminal scheme and my rejection of it. Mr. Haddad, if what you're telling me is true, would you be willing to help us gather evidence against Mr. Khalil? I thought about my children in overcrowded public schools, my wife taking cleaning jobs to help pay rent, Omar enjoying fraudulent millions while destroying my reputation. What would that involve? Contact him. Pretend you've reconsidered his offer. Get him to explain the scheme while we record the conversation. Inspector, I've already lost everything except my integrity. If helping you means Omar faces consequences for his crimes, then it's worth any risk. The recording device felt like a weight against my chest as I met Omar at a cafe in Hamra near the ruins of my former restaurant. He looked prosperous despite Lebanon's economic collapse. New suit, expensive watch, the confidence of a man who'd learned to profit from crisis. John, you look terrible, Habibi. I hear the house is gone too. I slumped into my chair, not having to fake exhaustion. Everything's gone. Omar, that offer you made, is it still available? His eyes lit with predatory satisfaction. I thought you'd decided that was beneath your moral standards. My moral standards won't feed my children or pay for their education. For 30 minutes, Omar detailed his fraudulent empire with the pride of a man who'd mastered Lebanon's systems of corruption. He'd expanded beyond insurance fraud, developing networks of corrupt government inspectors, complicit adjusters, and desperate business owners. The beauty is that everyone wins, he explained. Insurance companies pay based on professional engineering assessments. Property owners receive compensation for proper rebuilding. The government gets economic activity, and coordinators like myself ensure everything runs smoothly. But the engineering reports, are the structural problems real? Real is subjective, John. The flood created potential for future structural issues. We're documenting that potential before it manifests. I needed more specific details for the recording. If I joined this program, what would my role be? Omar showed me photographs of a commercial complex that had suffered flood damage. This property requires documentation of extensive remediation needs, potential insurance recovery of $2 million, 20% cut, $400,000 for signing some paperwork. Omar, I need to ask directly. Are we talking about filing false insurance claims for damage that doesn't actually exist? Omar's expression hardened. John, are you wearing a wire? My heart stopped. What kind of question is that? I'm a desperate man trying to save his family. Omar studied my face carefully, then relaxed. Paranoia comes with the territory. So, are we filing false claims? We're maximizing legitimate insurance recovery through comprehensive damage assessment. I had what Inspector Khoury needed, but Omar wasn't finished. There's something else you should know, he whispered. The flood that destroyed your restaurant wasn't entirely natural. My blood turned to ice. What do you mean? John, the drainage system in Hamra was designed decades ago for much smaller buildings. It couldn't handle the runoff from our modern high rises, especially during winter storms. What are you saying? I'm saying that sometimes infrastructure needs strategic modifications to create the right business opportunities. The storm was real, but the drainage failures that caused the flooding, he shrugged casually. Let's say they were enhanced. I stared at him in horror. You caused the flood? I optimized a natural weather event for a maximum business opportunity. The rain would have caused some flooding anyway. I simply ensured it caused enough flooding to generate significant insurance claims. My own destruction, my restaurant, my family's collapse, months of suffering had been orchestrated by my trusted partner. How many people know about this? Just me? And now you. Omar's smile turned cold, which means you're either my partner or you become a problem I need to solve. I need time to think. You've had 2 months. Are you in or are you a problem? I'm in, I said, the words tasting like poison. When do we start? Excellent, brother. Welcome back to prosperity. As we shook hands, I felt the weight of the recording device and thought about Jesus choosing to walk into Jerusalem, knowing what awaited him there. Sometimes justice required accepting personal risk. Omar's arrest came at dawn 3 days later. I watched from our modest apartment balcony as Lebanese security forces surrounded his villa in the hills, the same view of the Mediterranean that had once symbolized our shared dreams of prosperity. The charges were extensive: insurance fraud, conspiracy, destruction of public infrastructure, endangering public safety. In Lebanon's polarized media, the story became a symbol of the corruption that had undermined the country's reconstruction. 2 weeks later, Inspector Khoury called with unexpected news. As part of his plea negotiations, Omar has agreed to cooperate fully. He's providing information about the entire network and helping us recover stolen funds. What does that mean for restitution? For your family specifically? Approximately $1.8 million. The estimated value of what you lost due to his fraudulent activities plus damages for the deliberately caused flood, enough to rebuild our lives, though not enough to fully restore what we'd lost. One condition: you'll need to testify at his trial. When? 3 months? Are you willing? I thought about my children struggling in underfunded schools, my wife's hands cracked from cleaning work, the shame we'd carried while Omar enjoyed his fraudulent profits. Yes, I'll testify. 3 months later, I testified about Omar's crimes in a Beirut courtroom that had seen too many corruption cases. His lawyer tried to portray me as a willing conspirator who turned informant only when caught, but the evidence was overwhelming. Omar received 12 years in prison and orders for full restitution. As they led him away, his expression held the bitter resignation of a Lebanese man who'd gambled on corruption and lost. The restitution money allowed us to find a decent apartment, enroll our children in good schools, and begin rebuilding. But more importantly, the experience had taught us what really mattered in a country where external security was always fragile. I reopened a single restaurant 6 months later, smaller than my previous empire, but built on principles rather than shortcuts. We served honest Lebanese food to honest people, treating every customer as family. The opening was attended by Abu Ahmad, Inspector Khori, and neighbors who'd supported us through our darkest period. No politicians, no media coverage, no attempt to recapture former status. During the blessing ceremony, Abu Ahmad spoke about resurrection, how Jesus specialized in rebuilding lives that had been shattered. All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. Jesus makes lemonade out of lemons. John has learned what many successful Lebanese never discover, that true security isn't found in what you accumulate, but in who you serve. That night, alone in my modest restaurant, I felt something I'd never experienced in my previous empire. Peace that didn't depend on economic stability or political circumstances. I texted Abu Ahmad, "Thank you for showing me that Jesus isn't just history. He is present help in time of trouble." His response came immediately. "Welcome to the kingdom, brother. Now the real adventure begins." At home, I found my family sharing stories around our dinner table. Simple conversations, modest dreams, everyday blessings that couldn't be destroyed by floods or stolen by betrayal. "Dad," Yasmin said, "tell us again why you didn't take Omar's deal." I looked at these faces that mattered more than any business empire. Because some foundations are worth protecting, even when protecting them costs everything else. Like what? Like being able to look at your family and know they can trust you. Like knowing that when storms come, and in Lebanon they always come, you're standing on something that can't be washed away. That night, I read the gospel one final time before sleep. The words felt personal now, not ancient history, but present reality, in a land where resurrection had always been necessary for survival. Jesus had walked through his own valley of shadows in this same region, had faced his own choice between principle and expedience. He had chosen suffering over sin, truth over survival, love over self preservation. In my small way, I was learning to make similar choices. Not because I was particularly noble, but because I discovered that some foundations are worth standing on even when everything else crumbles. The flood had washed away my restaurant empire. Omar's betrayal had destroyed my financial security. But something new had been built in the ruins, something that could survive Lebanon's perpetual storms, a relationship with the God who specialized in resurrection stories, a family united by surviving crisis together, a business built on service rather than exploitation, a life worth losing everything to keep. In losing everything, I had finally found what truly mattered. And in Lebanon, where survival had always required knowing what was truly valuable, that made all the difference.